Hello historians, this is Mrs. Tyler. Today we are going to take a look at Unit 1, Notes 2, Writing the Constitution. So this is Notes 2 in your notes packet for Unit 1. We started off class by having students play in teams, a little game. You had to make up your own rules. You had 13 paper clips and 6 minutes to create a game, and you had a die to roll and to kind of work out what you were going to do. So we talked about how every group kind of ended up with a little bit different rules, and some groups had conflict, some groups just came together and were able to come up with a really great set of rules for their game without much struggle. Some teams got to a point in the game where they realized that the rules weren't working very well and they had to kind of start over. Some groups changed some of the rules as they went because it worked better for them. So we talked about all of this stuff to help us get in the mindset of sitting down to create a structure, in this case not for a game, but in this case for a government. And so that's what was going on. In the article that we recently read, we talked about the Articles of Confederation, and we read about Daniel Shays. We talked about how farmers were upset over, many of them had not been paid for their fighting that they did, the service that they did in the military under in the Continental Army fighting the Revolutionary War. They went home. They had to pay taxes, but they weren't paid for being soldiers, and they were away from their farms and businesses, so they hadn't been making money. And some of them were being taken to court and losing their land and their property because they couldn't pay their taxes. And there was no debt relief. We talked about how under the Articles of Confederation, each state kind of made their own laws and rules. Each state was allowed to make taxes. The federal government had really no power at all over the states. So there was all kinds of chaos, and it wasn't working out very well. We talked also about, at the end of that article that we read, there were some leaders from other states who were taking a look at what was going on in Massachusetts, and they're kind of getting a little bit scared that this chaos might spread. Okay, so after Daniel Shays led a series of rebellions in 1786, Congress was shaken. They decided to hold a convention to take a serious look at the situation of the country. Each state was asked to send delegates to this convention. It was going to be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they held it in May. They wanted it in the spring because they wanted to make sure that the snow could melt and that word could get to all 13 colonies and states, and all of those 13 states could decide who they were going to send for delegates, and then they had time to travel. So the purpose, though, is going to be just to revise the Articles of Confederation that they already had. So, however, Shays' Rebellion had proven that those Articles of Confederation were simply not strong enough to bind together the 13 separate states. So some delegates arrived with a different opinion in mind already. So we've got some of the framers of the Constitution that will arrive to this convention with this mindset of, we are not doing anything except revising what we already have. We fought a war to get rid of a big powerful king. We don't need a stronger federal government that will overpower citizens and states. We're not going to trade one tyranny for another. And yet another group of the people who arrived at this convention had a different opinion. They felt the Articles of Confederation were too weak. Other countries were not taking us very seriously. Any laws that were passed were like a joke because there was no way to enforce them. And they said that we needed a whole new plan. Okay, so right away they don't agree on what the purpose of this meeting is even supposed to be. So they're going to have to come to some common ground here. But in May of 1787, 55 delegates from 12 of the states, Rhode Island was against doing any of this. They were the tiniest state. They kind of had this inkling that some of the bigger states like Virginia were going to kind of run the show, and they weren't wrong, but they end up refusing to send anybody. So 12 states send 55 delegates that met in this room in Independence Hall. It's the same room where the Declaration of Independence had been written and signed 11 years earlier. There's our buddy George Washington. The delegates had asked him to preside over and lead the convention. He felt honored to do this. He's the one who called everything to order and got the meetings running every day. Okay, at the bottom of your notes page, there is a timeline. We're going to write in for 1787 that's the year the Constitutional Convention was held. And it's going to take like 5 or 6 months. It's going to take a good part of the year. I mean, these people like left home and stayed there until they could get it dealt with. Okay, it's going to take that pretty much that whole summer. So James Madison shows up. He was one of the delegates sent to the Constitutional Convention from the state of Virginia. He knew the Articles of Confederation were too weak. We actually read about him in our article yesterday. He was the one who said, I feel like the federal government gets no respect. It can't, there's no way that this government is binding these states together. It's like a rope of sand is what he called it. Okay. He said that the Articles of Confederation were too weak, and he felt it needed to be completely replaced with a stronger federal government. He's someone he called himself a federalist because he believed we needed a stronger federal government to unify those 13 states into one nation. So before the convention began, he spent months and months researching, reading, figuring out various forms of governments and all these political systems that had been in the past. And he's got a plan. He talks to the other delegates that are going to be going to the convention from his same state. And he's like, I don't want to be complaining the whole time. I want to come with an action plan to present. If we come with the solutions, then maybe people will pay attention and we can get what we need for this country. So we end up calling him the father of the Constitution. I jokingly referred to him as Jimmy Mad, the baby dad of the Constitution. Okay, he's arguing for a stronger federal government. The federal government is the governments that unify all 13 states and now all 50 states. Madison took very detailed notes during the Constitutional Convention. He and other delegates from Virginia presented their ideas, and they proposed plans that helped them form the basis for a completely new system of government. This plan took shape through months of debate, and all the state's delegates gave input into the final draft. Madison becomes known as the father of the Constitution because of his leadership skills. Okay, so they get to this convention. They quickly realize we have some really different views on many of the issues. We talked about how there 13 colonies had formed, and there were like 3 different regions within our early country, and people living in the southern states lived and worked way differently than people way up in those New England states. And in the middle, they all kind of had their own cultures, they had their own points of view, so they didn't want to give up what each of their states had developed. And so there's all these different opinions of what we're going to do. There's going to be tons of debating and a lot of arguments. 3 really big pivotal ones that we're going to talk about tomorrow or in our next set of notes. But they're not going to get along. But what the founding fathers, when they get together, the framers of the Constitution, what they do decide is like, we can talk all day about all the things that we disagree about, but we need to start from a place of where we do agree. So let's look at the Declaration of Independence, and that's going to be what we can all agree to. This is what we listed as what governments should be doing, and this is the letter we sent to the King of England saying you're not doing these things, and therefore it's time for us to have independence. So this is the document that we're going to look to. Now, they also understand that they have a little bit different opinions about some of the wording here, like all men are created equal. Not everybody agreed on who that was going to include right away, but they do know that they want to be sticking to these values that they wrote down in the Declaration of Independence, and they're going to do their very best with what they have in a situation where not everyone's agreeing to try to get to some agreement to get us started as a country. So we call these the guiding principles. These are going to be 7 values that we have as we get started writing this Constitution, and they're going to use these principles as kind of their ultimate goal in establishing a new government. These are the things they want to make sure they include. So the first guiding principle is called popular sovereignty. Sovereignty is a fancy word that just means self-governing. And popular, I think as middle schoolers, we kind of have an idea what that means. It's kind of that the people get to vote and in ways to govern themselves. So the government is subject to the will of the people. It works for us to protect our rights and liberties. So defining popular sovereignty, we're going to say that the government gets its power from the citizens. So we want to have an element where our citizens are going to get to vote on what happens in our government. But we also know that an actual literal direct democracy is not going to work. That brings us to our second principle. We value the principle of republicanism. All the delegates agree that the government should be made up of representatives. So with popular sovereignty, everybody's voting, but they're not all voting on all the laws and all of the things that need to be dealt with. They're voting to elect representatives. And then those representatives are going to meet as the governing body. They're going to have the debates. They're going to vote to decide on issues based on what they feel best represents the people who elected them. So under republicanism, citizens elect people to represent them in government. This is different. We talked last week when we were looking at different kinds of different types of government. This is different than that direct democracy where all the people vote on all the issues and the majority always rules. And we talked about how Ben Franklin had said, a democracy is when 2 wolves and a sheep vote on what's for lunch. In a direct democracy, nobody's going to protect the majority. No one's going to protect the individual. It's always going to be majority rules or sometimes even mob rules, and that's not what we wanted. That's why we have a republic and not a direct democracy. So we value republicanism, where citizens elect people who will represent them in government. And if they don't do what we need them to do, we can always elect someone different next time around. Okay? The next guiding principle is what James Madison is really trying to get at, this federalism. The delegates knew that 13 separate states needed to have a central government that would unify them. The Articles of Confederation had not given the federal government enough power to prevent fighting and rebellion in the states. This new government that they created was going to have a stronger federal government to unite the states. So federalism, states are unified into one nation under a federal government. Okay? But we didn't want a government that had one governing body that had all the power. That's what they had under the Articles of Confederation. That's what they had under the monarchy with the King of England. So they decided to take the powers that they want the government to have and divide them into 3 and make 3 governing bodies and separate the powers. And so we talk about how there's 3 branches of government. So no one governing body will hold all the power. We wanted to avoid creating that monarchy with a king that had all the power. So in separation of powers, government is divided into 3 equal branches. This is like total review from 3rd grade and 6th grade. You know that we have a legislative, executive, and judicial branch, and we'll talk about that again more in later notes this unit. The next one is checks and balances. The framers of the Constitution wanted to make sure that no governing body, none of those 3 branches would have all the power. So each of the 3 branches of government has powers over the other branches to ensure that none of those branches has more power. So no branch of government is more powerful than the others. We also want to make sure that our government is limited. We don't want them to have unlimited power. So the delegates make sure that the only power the government has are the ones that are listed in the Constitution, and all the people that we elect to office are expected to obey the laws. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're the president, if you're the Secretary of State, it doesn't matter if you've been a senator for 40 years, you're all supposed to be bound to the Constitution, and it's your responsibility to follow the laws as well. Okay? And the last of the guiding principles is individual rights. The delegates were very, very purposeful. They wanted to make sure that no big, powerful government could take away individual rights as citizens, and that no majority could overpower individuals. The government exists to protect the rights of individuals from a powerful majority. So we have individual rights. The government exists to protect the rights of individuals. Okay, as the Constitutional Convention proceeded and each issue was debated, the delegates wanted to make sure that their decisions fit within these 7 important guidelines. Okay, so our next set of notes, we will talk about some of the 3 major issues that were being debated during the writing of the Constitution. But these 7 principles are what those founding fathers, those framers of the Constitution, could agree on, and this is going to guide them as they navigate through those difficult conversations and those debates. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about the big decisions that they have to make in our next set of notes. Have a great day.